Scott, with you. And I don't know if you saw the new article in the New York Times. They're talking about that Houthis, and were able to shut down F-16 and F-35 jets. And is that one of the main reasons that Donald Trump has decided to get something in with Yemen?
No, not at all. There's a difference between this is written by somebody who doesn't understand anything about combat, etc. If you fly an aircraft into a defended airspace, you can be shot down because they have defensive capabilities. This is why we train our pilots in certain tactics. This is why we use, electronic warfare, etc., to prevent from being shot down. But there's a difference between being engaged and being shot down. There's no doubt that the Houthi engaged F-16 and F-35 aircraft. There's no doubt that American aircraft had to take defensive measures to avoid being shot down. Welcome to war. This is missing the point. The point isn't that the Houthi engaged F-16s and F-35s. The point is that the Houthi beat the United States. That's what we have to, let's think strategically. Let's stop getting down into the weeds. I'm not picking on you, but I mean, this is an absurdity. The United States entered a military campaign. Let's just be fair to General Kurilla and the Central Command. They rightfully said that they needed to engage in a multi-month-long campaign to degrade Yemen's air defense capabilities and to this strategic air campaign designed to defeat Yemen. Very expensive, and we would have run out of ammunition. And the political direction was, no, we need to compress this into a 30-day campaign, which General Kurilla attempted to do, and we failed. We didn't defeat the Houthi. We didn't suppress the Houthi. They continued to be able to not only fire against Israel, but to also threaten American shipping, to include military shipping. The most important thing here is that the Houthi were developing a targeting solution for U.S. naval warships, including the Harry S. Truman. We saw this played out in reality when the Harry S. Truman had to take emergency evasive action to avoid being struck by a Houthi weapon that caused an F-18 that was being put into position for launch to be thrown overboard. That means that tells me that the Houthi understood the window of vulnerability. Aircraft carriers, when they launch aircraft, when they recover aircraft, are very vulnerable because those are period of times when you can't maneuver, or you shouldn't be maneuvering. You should be maintaining a constant heading so airplanes can take off and airplanes can land. And what it is that the Houthi apparently were able to understand when the United States was going to be preparing to launch or recover aircraft and to time their attacks accordingly. This could be fatal for the Harry S. Truman. Not only that, the Truman had run out of ammunition. It needed to get out of Dodge. There was concern that if it went through the Suez Canal, it would be a sitting duck. It is a sitting duck in the Suez Canal. And if the Houthi obviously have weapons that can reach the Suez Canal, and the Truman was very vulnerable there. So it needed to extricate itself along the coastline. And there was concern that the Houthi would be able to strike this. So we needed to save our ships. This is humiliating for the United States. Absolutely humiliating for the United States. That's the story. The story isn't about F-16s and F-35s. The story is that the United States Navy was not only unable to defeat the Houthi, the Ansarallah, but had put itself in a very exposed position where it could be subjected to tactical defeat, the sinking of ships. And the bigger story here is that if the Houthi can do this to the United States in the Red Sea, imagine what Iran could do in the Persian Gulf or in the Indian Ocean. So this is a lesson learned to the United States, and hopefully it's a humbling experience, one that we take on board. I don't want to get ahead of the game, but there's so much else involved in this, because this the initiative wasn't the United States dealing with the Houthi or the Houthi dealing with the United States. Maybe Professor Marandi will correct me if I'm wrong, but Iran played a very important role in this because Iran is in the midst of, I think, what's going to be a very successful negotiation, one that could bring in, at least potentially, an end to the threat of war between the United States and Iran. But it's a sensitive period of negotiations that could be undermined if the United States were humbled by Houthi, compelled to escalate to, as Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, said, hold Iran accountable. I mean, my God, we're in the midst of negotiations with the Iranians to try and resolve a major issue, and the Secretary of Defense is talking about bombing Iran. Bombing Iran with what? The same fleet that's under threat from the Houthi? I think the Iranians wisely stepped in and said, we need to de-escalate this situation so that these negotiations have a fair chance. There's no guaranteed outcome on these negotiations, but I've heard positive things coming out of the Iranian side that I haven't heard in a long time. And I've heard similarly positive things coming out from the United States. And it would just be a shame that this chance for a negotiated settlement on this major issue, Iran's nuclear program, and the potential lifting of sanctions and I'm not going to say normalization of relations, but stabilizing relations between the United States and Iran, that it would be put at risk because Nasrallah kicked America's butt in the Red Sea. So I think Iran played a major role in this, and that's the other aspect of the story that's so much more important than whether an F-16 was forced to take evasive maneuvers or an F-35 had to likewise, fire off chaff and flares and avoid being shot down.
Professor Marandi, go ahead. Your take on what Scott said.
I think that Scott is absolutely correct. The United States failed in the Red Sea. It was a catastrophic mistake. I think all of us were on different programs saying that this will end in failure. The only people who apparently didn't see it coming was the U.S. government for one reason or another. It's important that in this sense that Ansarullah was also not only able to fire its missiles and drones and harass the Americans. They lost 3 F-18s for one reason or another. They lost a number of very expensive drones, which were very key for their operations. But also the fact that F-35s in particular were threatened, according to the New York Times, shows that Ansarullah has a very high degree of sophistication. And if they can track U.S. stealth jets, then as Scott was alluding to in a different way, imagine what Iran can do in the Persian Gulf or the Indian Ocean, or even in the Red Sea, because Iran's reach goes all the way to the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. So I think it is a lesson for the Americans to learn that military conflict with Iran, a conventional war would end in failure. Ansarullah, from my understanding, from the very beginning, was managing escalation. And from my understanding, they do have the ability to strike the ships and to strike the aircraft carrier. But they chose not to use their more sophisticated weapons because they did not want extreme escalation. So, and this is true about Hezbollah in Lebanon as well. It's true about the axis of resistance. The whole policy in defense of the Palestinians has been death by 1,000 cuts, in the sense that not to push too far, not to push too hard, but to keep the pressure going. So, for example, there are capabilities that Hezbollah has that it didn't use for its own reasons. There are capabilities that Ansarullah had that they don't use. But I think it is important that the United States was forced to back down. With regards to the nuclear negotiations, it's very difficult to say. What Scott says is true, but it's true for today. But 5 minutes from now, we could have something on Truth Social which is completely different. One of the things that I find interesting, which has nothing to do with Iran, is the fact that Trump backed down in the trade war against China, and he effectively capitulated. Now, that may be a failure for Trump, but it does show that he has the ability to change his position. And instead of just going down a one-way street, he has the ability to retreat. Now, he's very good at promoting himself, and he's very good at with the media, so he may be able to try to create an image for many that he succeeded with China. That's not really the point. The point is that he changed direction. So it is and the same is true with Ansarullah. He said Ansarullah capitulated. He used that word, in fact, but the reality was literally the opposite. But still, what is important is not whether he would, in this context, whether he was dishonest or not, or whether he was honest or not, but the fact that he was able to, instead of doubling down and going after Ansarullah further, or doubling down and continuing with the trade war with China and bringing down probably the U.S. economy to some deep recession at least, he changed course. And that is possible, therefore, with Iran. So when we hear some very, let's say, discouraging words from Witkoff, because to Witkoff, initially he spoke very positively and very reasonably. And then two things happened more recently. One was he retweeted the Secretary of Defense's tweet against Iran, which Scott alluded to, which surprised many that he would retweet that. The second was when he did an interview with Breitbart, and he said that no enrichment and that all has to go. But because of what we're seeing with regards to China and Yemen, but also some of the changes that are taking place, which I don't know really how far it's going to go, but there's direct negotiations with Hamas and that sort of thing, that to me means that it's possible that Witkoff in private could be saying something else. He could be more reasonable, because ultimately Iran's not going to accept the shutting down of its nuclear program or its enrichment program. Iran, and I think I should point this out, even though it's not directly linked to our discussion, enrichment for Iran is important because the United States has sanctioned everything in Iran. And even when Trump, I'm not sure if it was during Trump or Obama, perhaps both, there was a period of time when Iran was importing gasoline, and they were trying to prevent Iran from importing gasoline. And so that led to this policy in Iran that we must be able, sort of like what Trump is nowadays saying about the United States economy, but we must become self-sufficient in certain things, and that includes the nuclear program, that includes energy, and that's why Iran will simply not compromise on enrichment, but on the principle of enrichment. But there is a possibility, obviously, that if there's a deal, Iran could end higher degrees of enrichment, or it won't destroy any of its equipment, but it could put some in storage or something like that. But again, because of some of the things that we've been seeing over the past few days, literally, I think I think it's fair to say that despite some of the things that Witkoff has said and done, I think it's quite possible that behind the scenes he's going to be more reasonable at the negotiating table, at least.
Yeah. By the way, one of the good signs, Scott, with Donald Trump and his attitude is the new sort of talks between the United States and Hamas. And they have released a prisoner a Israeli-American prisoner, and to show some sort of goodwill gesture to the United States. And do you find it right now? It seems that you follow the Israeli media. It seems that they're in panic right now. What's going on, in your opinion, with the case of Hamas?
You know, as Professor Marandi has noted, give Trump 24 hours and you're going to have a completely different emotionally based foundation of American policy, and then give him another 24 hours and it's going to shift all over the place. I can't explain why he does this. Is this strategy on his part? Is it that he's a weak-minded individual who simply repeats the last thing whispered into his ear by whatever advisors closest to him? It's very difficult to assess this. I've been trying to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. I've spent a lot of time trying to superimpose strategic thinking on his actions, shoehorning it in sometimes when it's difficult to do so. I can't. It's hard. I'll give you my take, but I'm prefacing it by this is very hard to do. It's very hard to understand what's going on. I think I'm done with giving Donald Trump grand strategic capacity, meaning, I don't view him as the modern day Clausewitz or Sun Tzu or, masterful tactician as strat. I view him as a very simple minded man who is not able to comprehend fully the complexity of the issues he's articulating about. He acts on not on depth of understanding and knowledge, but on very shallow reasons. And because he is a narcissist, many of these reasons revolve around issues of his ego. And I think what we see with Israel is that he feels betrayed by Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it's as simple as if you've watched The Godfather, Godfather 2, Michael Corleone and Fredo. And Trump has now kissed Fredo and he's sending him out on a fishing boat, and Fredo's going to get a bullet in the back of the head. That's Netanyahu's fate. Netanyahu may not know it right now, but he messed with the Godfather. He lied to the Godfather. He betrayed the Godfather. He went behind the Godfather's back. He reached out to Michael Waltz. He set up a secret communication line with Michael Waltz and conspired with Michael Waltz to go against Donald Trump's policy objectives. And this is unforgivable from the Donald Trump world. And so now Benjamin Netanyahu is going to pay a price. And this price then is translates into American policy. One of Benjamin Netanyahu's greatest domestic political weaknesses is the hostage issue. If you've been studying what's happening in Israel, you know that Netanyahu has lied to the Israeli people from day one about he has no intention of letting the hostages go. He will kill them all. And he wants to kill them all. He is trying to kill them all. He's not trying to rescue them. This is a man who lied to the Israeli people, tried to blame Hamas for the failure of the release of the hostages. He's under investigation right now, according to an article written by Seymour Hersh, and I respect Seymour Hersh and I respect his sources. Netanyahu, early on, the Israeli forces apparently captured some Hamas internal policy documents, and one of them was what Hamas's posture was vis-a-vis the hostages. And according to this document, there was some thinking on the part of some that Sinwar should take the hostages, leave Gaza, and take the hostages to Iran. But what was missing is how Sinwar and everybody came back and said, no, the hostages remain. We will stay here in Gaza. We're not doing that. So it was a proposal put out by somebody. It was immediately shot down. But this document exists. So what Netanyahu did is sent one of his advisors to, this document is so secret that the Israelis refuse to acknowledge it exists. It's in a reading room in the Israeli intelligence headquarters, and you have to sign in. You're not allowed to take notes. You're allowed to read the document and leave. This guy went in there, copied the document verbatim, and came out, and Netanyahu released it on national TV, made reference to it as if to condemn Hamas. He's now under investigation for violating state secrets and for lying straight to the Israeli people. This hostage issue is emotional. You have the family of the hostages recognizing that this prime minister will kill their people. And so the United States had been respectful of Netanyahu's policy prerogatives because, of course, the Trump administration has staffed itself with more pro-Israeli Zionists per square inch than any other administration. But that doesn't mean that Donald Trump is a pro-Israeli Zionist. It means he's a politician who understands the importance of the pro-Israeli lobby in facilitating his victory, etc. But when Netanyahu lied to him, Trump now has the weapons he has. How do you demonstrate the weakness of Benjamin Netanyahu and how he blames Hamas? What Trump did is he said, I'll negotiate direct with Hamas and I'll get the American freed. And it happened. Boom. Which proves all at once, all Netanyahu had to agree to is negotiations, and he could get the hostages freed. That the problem isn't Hamas, the problem is Netanyahu. Now Netanyahu has a huge political problem, and that's what Trump wants. And now Netanyahu is desperate. He's panicking. He's talking about an all-out war on Gaza. I can't predict what, like Professor Marandi said, wait 24 hours. Who knows what Trump's going to tweet or post on Truth Social. But I will say this. Trump has said that the United States will not support further military operations into Gaza. And if Netanyahu seeks to do that, we may be looking at a strategic break with Israel. A strategic break, not because it's the policy of the United States, because Michael Corleone has decided to put a bullet in the back of Fredo's head. As long as Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel, and if he does things that are against what Donald Trump wants, there will be a price to be paid. Netanyahu is talking about, detoxing Israel from American security. I say, good luck with that, Bibi. We run your damn country. We own your country. This is what I've said all along. Everybody's like, Israel owns America. I said, no, it doesn't. Not even close. We own Israel. Israel can't do anything without us. And if Netanyahu wants to try to be independent, he's betting on support from an American establishment that isn't going to go against Donald Trump on this one. Donald Trump has made some choices. I don't know how far this is going to go. Like you said, Marco Rubio could come whisper in his ear tomorrow, and Trump's going to, Benjamin Netanyahu is the greatest person in the world. I love him like a brother. He's great. Then the next day, Witkoff comes in and tells him something. Benjamin Netanyahu is the scum of the earth. He should be shot on sight. Who knows what this man-child who is the president of the United States is going to do? Because that's what he is, a man-child. This isn't an adult. This is a man-child with adult-like capability. This is the danger of giving a 5-year-old kid a loaded pistol. And that's what we've done by electing this man as our president. This is an embarrassment. I have never been more embarrassed in my life than the performance of this president, because it's not the performance of a rational actor. It's the performance of a narcissist, egomaniac who puts his own personal interests ahead of the nation that he's supposed to lead. But when it comes to Gaza and when it comes to Hamas, I mean, how do we assess this? I mean, you want me to say something like, it's amazing that the United States is now negotiating directly with Hamas. Well, it is amazing that we're doing that. I agree. But what does it mean? Is it reflective of a strategic shift that says we now recognize Hamas as a legitimate political body within the Palestinian nation? And when Trump says maybe he'll talk to the Saudis about recognizing a Palestinian state, that Hamas will be part of that governing authority, because that goes directly against every pronouncement ever made by Trump about Hamas. So is this formal policy, or is this just the man-child doing something to get revenge on Netanyahu? It's impossible for me to say at this juncture.
Professor Marandi, your take on Hamas?
I just wanted to explain something that Scott said. I think that document, if I'm not mistaken, was misused by Netanyahu and his team and misinterpreted for the public to imply that the martyr Yahya Sinwar wanted to leave and take the prisoners with him, but in reality was saying something different. He wanted
Correct.
to imply that it was his. But I think what Scott is saying is absolutely correct. But again, as he also pointed out, we don't know what's going to happen in a few hours from now. We don't know what Trump is going to post on Truth Social. Even if, for example, we do have a nuclear deal with the United States, it wouldn't be the JCPOA, because I was saying today to someone, it would have to be the JCPOA plus, in the sense that it would have to recognize Iran's technological advancements over the last few years, because it came at a great price. scientists were martyred, and Iran was under sanctions, and the Americans are not going to compensate for that. And also, it's going to have to end the loopholes that existed in the original JCPOA, which Obama used to cheat Iran, and so did Trump until he tore up the deal. The United States, whenever it would cheat Iran, there were no consequences for their actions. They paid no political price, let alone any other price. So a potential nuclear deal, if we ever get there, and that's not for certain, of course, would be substantially different from the JCPOA. It would have to be under. It would have to be more. It would have to take these issues into account. But even if we do have a deal with the United States, the problem goes back again to what Scott was saying, and that is, you sign a deal hypothetically, and then tomorrow you have something on Truth Social which completely negates everything and says, "Well, no, I don't like this deal, and we're going to have to do something else." So it makes working with the United States very, very difficult. I don't want to say impossible, because I don't want to, rule out any success. It just shows how complicated it is. Even the negotiations with China. What Trump did was he went back to where the United States was before Liberation Day. We have the same tariffs that existed back then. The only difference now is that besides the fact that a lot of damage has been caused, but also there's now a 3-month period where the two sides have to negotiate. And during these 3 months, business people don't know what to do. They won't know whether to purchase goods, to move their factories, to invest, not to invest, because there will be this sense of it's ambiguous where things will be in the weeks and months ahead. It's unclear, and I think that that's a problem that we're going to face with the United States and Iran. It's a problem that Ansarullah will have to face. If I was Ansarullah, which I'm sure they would. Right now, they're upgrading their military capabilities, they're bringing in new weapons, they're developing new technology. Why? Because we don't know, and they don't know definitely what's going to happen in the weeks ahead. So this is the problem with Trump. His supporters call it strategic uncertainty, but I think it's more the man-child definition. I think the man-child definition of Scott is more accurate. I think it's more of chaos than anything else. And this is something that we're going to have to deal with, not just Iran, the Russians. I mean, one other very interesting thing has been how Trump has sort of evolved over the past few months with regards to Russia. He could have, on day one, ended the war because he had momentum. He had won all the swing states. He won the popular vote, and he said during his campaign that he's going to end the war. He could have stopped it. He could have given the Russians the key concessions that they needed. The Russians probably would have given him some concessions too to get this over with, but he would have had to give most of what Russia wanted, and then it would have been over. But he didn't do that, and now he's gradually, not completely, but sometimes he's sounding more like Biden nowadays. Now he's not Biden, he's not there, but Kellogg obviously seems to be as if he's a Biden employee. So the point is that we don't know where Trump is going to be on Russia, on Ukraine, where he's going to be on China, where he's going to be on global trade, where he's going to be on Iran, Yemen, Palestine in the weeks ahead. Everything is ambiguous. This, in my opinion, is actually in the long run beneficial to countries like Iran, because this uncertainty is causing countries to start to increasingly think about making decisions and excluding the United States. Now, of course, the trade war itself was an incentive for this, and other issues also created this incentive, the sanctions and so on. But I think that this chaos in Washington is another catalyst that will push the global majority, the global South, perhaps some in Europe, who knows, to rethink their place in the global order. And I think that's going to speed in the tilt away from the United States.